Hello listeners, I am your host Hannah, and this is Sinister Obsessions, a true crime podcast focusing on the darkest and most mysterious crimes of the Far East. Today, this episode marks the anniversary of the death of Leslie Cheung, a very famous actor and singer from Hong Kong. Although I wrote this episode on the anniversary, it will be released 8 days later. But in memory and honor of Mr. Cheung, I thought it was time to tell his story and how it can fit into the world of true crime. But before we begin, don't forget to check out my absolute favorite Korean skincare brand, Skin Food. The product I'm suggesting today is the Salmon Dark Circle Concealer Cream, suitable for all skin types, more targeted towards females as it requires makeup coverage on top. But it is a highly concentrated, creamy texture, which gives a very soft and bouncy moistful application. It adheres tightly like cream and provides a smooth finish without clumping. Just use a small blob, dab, and blend the concealer gently onto your dark circles, and layer until your desired coverage and set with a powder. So, why Skin Food? Why do I keep mentioning this? Why this brand? Well, Skin Food believes in the power of nutritious food on the skin, utilizing familiar food ingredients to create nature-inspired products which genuinely cater to all skin types. I use a variety myself, and on my sensitive skin, it genuinely truly works. As mentioned in previous episodes, Skin Food is reputed for the black sugar mask wash-off and perfect essential scrub to the cream mist. I could go off on the list all day, but yep, for those dark circles on a tired morning, check out that Salmon Dark Circle Concealer Cream. And remember, Sinister Obsessions is on Instagram, Spotify, YouTube, and TikTok. Give a like, follow, rating. Appreciate it, guys. Okay, are we ready to get into our case today? The tragic death of Leslie Cheung. And before we begin, there is listener warning that today we are discussing suicide and sensitive information regarding the LGBTQ plus rights community in Hong Kong. So, Leslie Cheung, the king of canto pop, a truly fearless pop idol who defied convention. What caused one of the most influential and cultural icons in the Chinese world to jump from the 24th floor of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel on the 1st of April 2003. Throughout his storied 26-year career, Leslie released several successful albums and acted in dozens of films. He also won critical acclaim for his roles portraying queer characters in films. He gained international attention with his portrayal of Cheng Die, an androgynous Peking opera star, in the 1993 film Farewell My Concubine. The film would go on to win the Palme d'Or at Cannes that year and was nominated for 2 Oscars in 1994. Leslie lived his truth openly during the time when the LGBTQ plus community was heavily persecuted. He even declared his love for a man, his childhood friend and long-term partner Daffy Tong, during a live concert in 1997. On stage, Leslie unleashed a sexually fluid charm. His defining performance came in a 1997 concert where he danced intimately with a male dancer to his song Red and wore a black suit with a pair of sparkling crimson high heels. But it was a little before 6:30 p.m. on the evening of the 1st of April 2003. Leslie Cheung knew that this would be the last day of his life. He left a suicide note explaining how he had been suffering deeply from depression before plunging to his death from the 24th floor of the famous Mandarin Oriental Hotel in central Hong Kong. In today's episode, I will be diving deep into the life of Leslie Cheung, the struggles of being part of the LGBTQ plus community whilst being in the spotlight in China during the 80s and 90s, and what led to Leslie's tragic death. So, who is Leslie Cheung? Born in Kowloon, Hong Kong on the 12th of September 1956, as Cheung Fat Cheung, he was the youngest of 10 children, yes, 10 children, and was from a middle-class Hakka family, which is a Chinese subgroup whose ancestral homes are in the Hakka-speaking province areas in China of Guangdong, Fujian, Jiangxi, etc., etc. Leslie's father, Chung Woot Hoi, was a well-known tailor specialized in suits, and actually had many celebrity customers, including Western celebrities, such as film director Alfred Hitchcock and actors Marlon Brando and Cary Grant. However, despite his dad's grand reputation in the fashion industry, Leslie was quite uninspired by the profession. It was, unfortunately, not a happy childhood for Leslie. He felt emotionally estranged from his father and siblings and would witness bitter arguments and fights in the household. Leslie expressed feelings of depression from a young age and longed for affection from his parents, who were absent from home for the majority of his childhood. On top of that, his father's appalling abusive treatment to his mother had a traumatic and long-lasting effect on Leslie's perspective of marriage. So when his dad married another woman, Leslie's emotional life further deteriorated. Eventually, he was brought up by his grandmother, who he genuinely grew close with. But devastatingly, Leslie expressed how his upbringing felt like a silent resentment with nothing worth remembering, except for the then death of his grandmother when he was in primary school, which was the one thing he actually remembered about his childhood. And yeah, honestly, it's devastating to hear stories like this about many, many people's upbringings. And I do believe that, especially back in the 50s when Leslie was born, it might have been more common that people got married and had many children, not necessarily because they wanted to, but just because that was the societal norm. And raising 10 children, 10, it's not too much of a surprise that his father was so estranged, had a stiff upper lip approach to raising children. He was successful and busy in his job. Yeah, I've read far too many stories about abusive childhoods whilst researching many of these cases up until this day, unfortunately. And it is still kind of common in many places today still. So Leslie attended Rosary Hill School for secondary education in Hong Kong and then actually moved to England at the age of 12. He enrolled at an independent boys' boarding school, Eccleshall School, Quaidham, near Norwich, which is east in England. I've only been to Norwich a couple of times and I've never heard of that school. But during his time at Rosary Hill, Leslie did poorly academically, but he really excelled in the English language, which is probably why he was able to move over to England and be in a boarding school. But he discovered a newfound interest in Western film and immersed himself into music, studying the original soundtrack of Romeo and Juliet. During weekends, he worked as a bartender and would sometimes do amateur singing at his relative's restaurant in Southend-on-Sea. Then he came across the film Gone with the Wind. Oh my gosh, what a film. What a book, to be honest. Absolutely up there with one of my favorites. Check it out, guys. And finally, he chose Leslie as his English name, inspired by the actor Leslie Howard, feeling that the name can be a man or a woman's and it's very unisex. Leslie then attended the University of Leeds, where he studied textile management, so he kind of did follow in his father's footsteps at that point. But after 1 year of studying, in 1976, he returned to Hong Kong as his father had become tragically paralyzed on one side of the body after a stroke. His father, of course, wanted all of his children to be at home to look after him, despite him not looking after his children at all whilst they were growing up. So Leslie abandoned his studies and growing passion and became a salesman for Levi's for a living. He did recall that this period of his life was kind of like having no plans and feeling like he was going nowhere. But this is when things began to shake up quite a bit for Leslie. Leslie went back to high school as a mature student and formed a band where he was actually the lead singer with his classmates. In May 1977, the band members signed up individually for RTV's Asian Singing Contest. Only Leslie remained in the final round of the Hong Kong division, where he finished as the first runner-up with a rendition of American Pie. He proceeded to the Pan-Asian division, finishing 5th. Soon after the competition, RTV offered Leslie a 3-year contract as a second-rate actor for RTV. He also signed with Polydor Records with hopes of releasing some music albums. However, as probably to be expected, immediately Leslie's career in show business did not take off. His first film role was in Erotic Dream of the Red Chamber in 1978, and it was a softcore porn production that, in quotations, featured his bare buttocks. Naughty Leslie. His first 2 albums then were solely recorded in English, and his third album, Lover's Arrow, was recorded in Cantonese. But tragically, the albums failed commercially, and critics lambasted Leslie's voice as chicken-like. Bit rude, but he didn't give up. Leslie's first public performance at the 1977 Hong Kong Pop Folk Music Festival was booed off the stage, though, by the audience, which is so heartbreaking. I feel like nobody deserves that, especially when they're trying as hard as he did. He described his early days in the show business as full of uncertainty. He remembered that his singing career at an early stage felt like a person running into a rock, full of despair and obstacles. And seeing very little potential, Polydor allowed him to depart on his own terms. But Leslie was determined to continue. All it takes, right, is one record label to sign with him and make him a superstar. He just needed a different angle and a breakthrough, as they say. Rome wasn't built in a day. I had to there. So anyway, in 1982, he managed to sign with Capitol Artists, a record label that was closely associated with the then dominant television network TVB. TVB is still super dominant in Hong Kong today, and Leslie worked very hard and produced his first hit single, The Wind Blows On. And it was a cover version of Momo Yamaguchi's Japanese single, The Other Side of Goodbye. And finally, this song was successful in the charts, totally revitalizing Leslie's image as a canto pop singer. So I'm sure all of you listeners have heard of K-pop, a form of music originated in South Korea where they create catchy melodies, impressive choreography, flawless group efforts, a mix of rap and pop in their groups and songs to express their culture. Super, super different from popular groups in the West. K-pop did become famous too for the well-known training periods that the stars need to go through before their debut. Anyway, canto pop is more or less the same, but with Cantonese music. As in Hong Kong, the dominating language is Cantonese. At the moment, a boy group called Mirror are definitely dominating the canto pop world, and this genre of canto pop began in the 1970s, reaching height of popularity in the 80s and 90s, also forming into canto rock. But canto pop is also used to refer to the cultural context of its production and consumption. So yeah, the nominal album was Leslie's first to be certified gold by the International Federation of the Phonographic Industry in Hong Kong. So he was on fire at this point and soon released a second album with Capitol called Craziness in 1983. And it was a compilation of songs he actually recorded for his TVB dramas. Just like your K-dramas, TVB also have those. They also produce Miss Hong Kong and Miss Chinese International Superstar pageants. So his album was another success, receiving another gold certification from the IFPI Hong Kong. And with a huge amount of confidence now, passion, and success, he continued his movie crossover with roles mostly in teenage films and earned his first major recognition for starring in a film called Nomad in 1982. While Leslie had started to become a well-known actor with a now likable persona in TVB productions, his role as a delusioned teenager in Nomad foresaw his adapting future reputation as now an icon of a rebel or a bad boy. The role garnered Leslie a nomination, though, for Best Actor at the 1983 Hong Kong Film Awards. And this is also something that's quite common, especially in the K-pop world, as I'm sure it is in other parts of the world. But when an individual K-pop or canto pop group member becomes an idol, the company or label they are with are known to carefully develop their public personality, which is quite strictly controlled. And this is due to the fans' emotional attachments to the individual idol, and it's extremely profitable. It is more known in the K-pop world. For example, you have your famous singer IU, who is literally Korea's Taylor Swift, and she is known as Korea's little sister, as she has a very innocent and fragile appearance. And her label are super careful to protect that image and not have any sort of reputation built around her. The same goes with the BTS boys. You have Jungkook, who is the golden maknae of the band, and the sole visual because of his combination of handsome looks, phenomenal voice, and dance moves and charm. When Jungkook started to get tattoos and drink beer on his V Lives and was caught smoking, fans were disappointed. Although these are perfectly normal and should be allowed things to do in the West, it tarnishes these idols' looks, even when they are full-grown adults. Kind of like IU being known as Korea's little sister. It's almost like they're expected to keep that same very sort of dreamlike image for as long as possible. Because honestly, some fans out there are that delusional and they just can't believe that the idol is like any other normal person. Oh, and forget dating. They cannot date. Dating is an absolute no-no. They have got to maintain that image of, dream single idol. Because sometimes it has been known that if a K-pop idol has dated, they lose a ton of fans. Yeah, fans were that convinced that they could end up having a chance one day. So Leslie was in this period of, I guess, developing an image for herself, or should I say, the label he was with were developing his image, which definitely comes into play with his eventual depression and suicide. So 1984, Leslie's year. This was when he achieved mass stardom, and he released a hit single, Monica, a cover of another Japanese single by Koji Kikawa. The song topped charts in Hong Kong and was one of the 10 gold certificate songs honored at TVB's 1984 Jade Solid Gold Best 10 Music Awards and the 1984 RT Hong Kong Top 10 Gold Song Awards. I am just losing track at this point. But the song's upbeat dance production introduced a new musical trend to canto pop, in addition to the traditional sentimental ballads that had dominated the scene previously. So, Leslie's 1984 self-titled album, which included Monica, ended up selling over 200,000 copies. And he continued to star in TVB dramas Once Upon an Ordinary Girl and the film Behind the Yellow Line. In the latter, he co-starred with actress Maggie Cheung and singer Anita Mui. Both productions were commercially successful and pushed Leslie even further into the limelight as a prominent entertainer. And as Leslie's fame expanded, the media began to pit him against fellow singer-actor Alan Tam, as the two were the most successful male cantopop singers at that moment. Everyone loves a story and a bit of drama in the cantopop world. The publicity's so-called rivalry contributed to cantopop's booming sales and lasted until the end of the 80s. Leslie's career was not stopping at this point. He continued to peak, he boomed with new hit singles, male leads in TVB dramas. He took another turning point when he was in a John Woo-directed 1986 crime action film, A Better Tomorrow, playing a youthful and impulsive police officer torn between justice and his criminal brother. So he was soaring. Again, in 1987, he released another album under a new company now. I believe it's pronounced Signpoly Records in Hong Kong, with an album called Summer Romance, again topping the charts. Additionally, another performance with his co-star Anita Mui in Rogue consolidated the pair's reputation as the top Hong Kong entertainers. And these two were actually close friends in real life. So then Leslie embarked on a 23-day tour at the Hong Kong Coliseum in mid-1988, sponsored by Pepsi. The tour was sold out and accumulated over 250,000 spectators. He also held several shows catering to the Chinese community in North America, visiting Atlantic City, Calgary, Toronto, and Vancouver. However, this was now a time in the wake of the intense political atmosphere in mainland China, which came about in the late 1980s, which would culminate in the 1989 Tiananmen Square protests. Successful cantopop singers announced public withdrawal from the music industry and actually immigrated to Western countries during this time. And I'm sure many of you listeners are aware, but the Tiananmen Square protests brought mass devastation on the 4th of June 1989. I have to be super careful talking about this because there is a potential I could move back to Hong Kong in the future. And as you know, discussing incidents as such could be very jeopardizing for that. So I will share the very surface level facts only. It was a student-led demonstration held in the square in Beijing, which lasted from the 15th of April to the 4th of June 1989. Whilst demonstrators attempted to find a peaceful resolution, the government declared martial law on the evening of the 3rd of June and deployed troops to occupy the square, which devastatingly became a massacre. And the troops literally open-fired using an assault rifle, and the number of deaths and the extent of the bloodshed in the square itself have been in dispute ever since the events, but really up there with several thousands of deaths. I won't discuss it much further, but unfortunately the anniversary of the Tiananmen Square is no longer allowed to be acknowledged in Hong Kong, and it was a genuine fear that back in 2019, when the Hong Kong protests were very active, it could have ended in a similar catastrophe. But continuing on, Leslie followed suit and left Hong Kong during this time, announcing his retirement from cantopop and actually emigrated to Vancouver in 1989. He actually donated a lot of his profits from his 1989 album, Salut, to the Hong Kong Academy for Performing Arts, which was named the Leslie Cheung Memorial Scholarship actually after his death. Although Leslie quit his career as a pop singer from 1989 to 1995, he continued his music career as a songwriter and composed more than 10 songs during that time. He won 4 nominations for Best Original Movie Song Award at the Golden Horse Film Festival and 2 nominations for Best Original Film Song at the Hong Kong Film Awards. In 1998, he was a member of the jury at the 48th Berlin International Film Festival. Again, this man was pure talent, always on fire. His determination truly got him far. And when he returned to the music, he signed a contract with Rock Records and again started releasing those albums again and just booming through the 90s at this point. And towards the end of the 90s is when he became much more open about his sexuality, as he released a comeback album called Beloved. And in 2001, he collaborated with William Chang, an art director of Wong Kar-wai's Day of Being Wild, to make a music video, Bewildered, about the intimacy between two gay men. Japanese ballet dancer Nishijima Kazuhiro plays Leslie's lover in the video. But the music video was actually banned by Hong Kong's public broadcaster TVB for promoting homosexuality. Leslie, though, refused to edit the scenes out. Hats off to him. Leslie then actually had his last concert tour, the Passion Tour, which took place in Hong Kong and overseas from 2000 to 2001, and collaborated with fashion designer Jean-Paul Gaultier, transforming him from angel to devil in 4 costumes: the angel, the pretty boy, the Latin lover, and the devil, denoting cross-cultural drag and focusing on Leslie's bisexuality, which we will get onto in a moment. So we have plenty discussed Leslie's success, talent, and life through the lens as the most successful cantopop performer and actor across the decades. But who was Leslie? What was really going on beneath the surface of all this success? Well, let's start with the most fun, his love life. So we're going to rewind back all the way to 1977. During the filming of that TV series Love Story, the then 20-year-old Leslie met and fell in love with his 17-year-old co-star Theresa Mo. They began dating after they finished the series, and in 1979 he actually proposed to Theresa with flowers. But his sudden proposal startled her and she began to distance herself from him. Although they eventually broke up after the proposal and briefly lost contact, they actually ended up remaining close friends after they reunited for the 1992 film All's Well Ends Well, which kind of cute, kind of heartbreaking. Anyway, Leslie later went into a brief relationship with an actress named Shirley Yim, but they broke up in 1980 due to their incompatibility for each other's lifestyles. However, he wasn't slowing down. Leslie and a Hong Kong model and actress who he met on the set of TV series Agency 24 were then in a relationship for 2 years from 1981 to 1983. A year later, in 1984, at the house of Albert Young, he met Cindy Young, who is the youngest daughter of Albert Young and had recently returned from Boston. Apparently, Cindy was also a fan of Leslie and was about 7 years younger than him. They went out on several dates until she then returned to Boston. But they continued their relationship through phone calls and letters, but would eventually part ways in the following year, but still remaining good friends. Leslie did admit, though, that he felt that if he had not been in show business, he could have already been married with children, like most of his friends. But when Leslie moved to Vancouver in 1990, he became a Canadian citizen by naturalization. So Leslie's sexuality as bisexual then came out when his longtime friend, Daffy Tong Hock Tak, the godson actually of Leslie's mother, got together. And again, they knew each other since childhood and they reconnected again when they met in 1982 and then started a relationship that spanned over 2 decades until Leslie's death. In the early days of the relationship, before Leslie really hit the fame, Tong, who was actually a bank executive, supported Leslie financially. During his concert at the Hong Kong Coliseum in 1997, Leslie sang the love song, The Moon Represents My Heart, and actually dedicated it to his mom and his boyfriend Daffy. This moment is seen to have been an official recognition of his relationship with Daffy, making him one of the first public figures in the Chinese world to come out. Leslie publicly declared his love for another man was an intensely brave move, because homosexuality was only decriminalized in China in 1997. And it wasn't until 2001 that it was declassified as a mental disorder. Although adult gay sex was decriminalized, Travis Kong, an associate professor of the sociology research gay culture at the University of Hong Kong, told BBC Chinese actually in 2018 that queer men were still being called AIDS men and perverts in the 1990s. We will get more into detail about this later on in the episode. But he also expressed that in a society so oppressive to the LGBTQ plus community, the coming out of such a renowned pop star had a huge effect on the general public. Sadly, Leslie Cheung faced harsh backlash for living his truth. In an interview in 1992, he actually stated, "My mind is bisexual. It's easier for me to love a woman, but it's also easier for me to love a man. I believe a good actor will follow his heart and ever be changing." So, listeners, at this point in the episode, I will discuss the development of the gay and lesbian rights movement in Hong Kong, which could be sensitive to some listeners, so please be warned. But in the early 1980s, when Great Britain and the People's Republic of China negotiated the terms for returning Hong Kong to the PRC in 1997, a gay and lesbian rights movement was almost non-existent in Hong Kong. Male homosexual conduct was a criminal offence punishable by a maximum term of life imprisonment, and the local police maintained a special unit solely responsible for monitoring homosexual activity. The absence of any legal recourse left those who were part of the LGBTQ+ community vulnerable to discrimination at work, school, and in the general community. And unfortunately, it was legal to discriminate on the ground at the time, and employers did so very openly. Under the social climate, those in the LGBTQ+ community maintained an extremely low profile in Hong Kong and were decidedly apolitical. However, in early 1997, only months before the transfer of severity to the PRC, the atmosphere had significantly changed. Hong Kong created a bill of their rights that expressly grants individuals a right to their privacy. As a result, the legislature had decriminalized most male homosexual conduct, and a small gay and lesbian rights movement had emerged. Hong Kong had then additionally enacted its first anti-discrimination laws, the Sex Discrimination Ordinance and the Disability Discrimination Ordinance. In 1995, the legislature defeated a broader bill prohibiting discrimination on the ground of sexuality. However, a member of the legislature reintroduced the bill in 1996, and it is currently pending. In response to these proposals, the Hong Kong government recently conducted a formal public consultation exercise on the problem of sexuality discrimination. And these changes, which occurred during the 13-year transition period leading to Hong Kong's return to the PRC, stem largely from increased public demand for legal protection of human rights, democracy, and equality. So, supporters of criminalizing homosexual behavior actually believe that these laws emerged from the Chinese culture's strong aversion to homosexuality, but the actual source of these laws was English law, the origin of most criminal laws in Hong Kong since it had become a British colony. English criminal law prohibited all male homosexual conduct until the enactment of the Sexual Offences Act of 1967-21. The Act decriminalised homosexual acts in private between consenting adults, defined a person 21 years of age or older. In a passing act, the British Parliament implemented one of the recommendations of the Departmental Committee on Homosexual Offences and Prostitution, commonly known as the Wolfenden Committee. 10 years earlier, the Wolfenden Committee had recommended the decriminalisation of homosexual behaviour in private between consenting adults because it was following England's lead with respect to statutory reform. Moreover, in the late 1960s, there were extremely few prosecutions for homosexual offences, and the police made no real attempt to enforce the law against private consensual homosexual conduct. In the late 1970s, however, a series of events made Hong Kong significantly more dangerous for gay men. In 1978, a well-known English solicitor pled guilty to charges of buggery and gross indecency involving 4 15-year-old Chinese boys and was sentenced to 3 years imprisonment. In 1979, while serving his sentence, the solicitor alleged in a petition for clemency that he was discriminated against and subjected to selective enforcement of the law. He also threatened to name many high-placed gay men, and as a result of these allegations and evidence discovered during the course of the solicitor's prosecution, the government established a special investigation unit within the Criminal Investigation Department of the Royal Hong Kong Police Force. Then, in 2005, Justice Hartman found that the unequal age of consent was unconstitutional under the Bill of Rights Ordinance, violating the right to equality. The ruling was upheld by the Court of Appeal, but the provisions were not formally removed from the Crimes Ordinance until 2014. However, in June 2009, the Hong Kong government extended limited recognition and protection to cohabiting same-sex couples under the Domestic Violence Ordinance. And to this day, same-sex marriage or civil unions are not recognized in Hong Kong. I could, guys, go obviously a lot deeper into this, but it could go on forever to explore that avenue. However, I have put a link in my references to a really good article that explains further in depth about the LGBTQ plus rights movement. So all of this, of course, would have deeply affected Leslie Cheung, especially being in the spotlight. Cheung is well known for his queer characters in Happy Together and Farewell My Concubine. A pair of red heels that he wore during a performance of the song Red were described as a top draw at an exhibit on fashion in Hong Kong. Many media outlets focus primarily on arguing about his queer identity instead of on his artistic achievements in film and music. Before his death, Leslie mentioned in interviews that he had become depressed because of the negative comments about gender crossing in his Passion Tour concert. He had planned to retire from stage performance because of the strain of being a bisexual artist in Hong Kong, facing stigmatization, surveillance, and marginalization, which is just so fucking sad, to be honest. But Leslie was actually a huge supporter of several charities that were concerning child welfare. He was the first canto pop star to launch a charity fundraising at a concert. In 1996, although he rarely sang in public at the time, he did sing 3 theme songs from his films to raise money and for the elderly. For his 1997 concert at the Hong Kong Coliseum, he set up a collection booth for the Red Card charity, and donations of 100 or above could obtain a set of cards. He said he will lead the way and donated $1 million Hong Kong dollars to the Children's Cancer Fund in his own name. And the concert raised more than 800,000 Hong Kong dollars, to which Leslie and his friends added more than 100,000 each, which made up $1 million at the end to donate to the Cancer Fund. Additionally, as we know, Leslie was very good for his fashion sense, and he was the first to donate 3 well-loved, carefully selected pieces to an auction. Leslie donated his beloved badminton racket to ID Club Taiwan to be auctioned to raise money for the Children's Cancer Fund additionally. So Leslie was just a genuinely really good person, a massive heart, and whilst he was battling with his depression for so much of this time, he was still putting others before himself. But the fame, his relationship, and his friends and fans were not enough to dissolve the dark thoughts that plagued his mind daily. Leslie then died by suicide on the 1st of April 2003, around 6:43 p.m., leaping from the 24th floor of the Mandarin Oriental Hotel. This hotel actually used to be the tallest building in Hong Kong, and it is the first of the Mandarin Oriental chains. It's honestly a beautiful hotel, and it's so shocking to know that it was the location of his death. Police declined to provide a full identity, but said a man surnamed Cheung, whose given name included Wing, leapt from a hotel room in the Mandarin Oriental. He was then certified dead at 7:06 p.m. after arriving at Queen Mary Hospital. Then, as one of the most popular performers in Asia, his death broke the hearts of millions. And nobody could quite believe it, as they thought it could have been an April Fool's joke. But as the news truly spread, it shocked the Chinese community worldwide. The day after his death, his partner Daffy confirmed that Leslie did suffer from clinical depression. He also revealed that Leslie had actually previously attempted suicide in November 2002. And at Leslie's funeral, his niece disclosed that her uncle had severe clinical depression and really suffered over the last year. He was then eventually buried in Po Fook Hill, Sha Tin. Despite the risk of infection, though, from SARS, which was going around at the time, this was very heavily discussed in my episode from Season 3, The Milkshake Murder, tens of thousands of people attended Leslie Cheung's memorial service, which was held for the public on the 7th of April 2003, including celebrities and other fans, many from other parts of the world such as mainland China, Taiwan, Korea, Japan, Southeast Asia, the United States, and Canada. His funeral was held on the 8th of April 2003. For almost a month, his death dominated newspaper headlines in Hong Kong, and his songs were constantly on air. And his final album, Everything Follows the Wind, was released 3 months after his death. A suicide note was actually found on his body, according to the police, and this is what it said in translation. Depression. Many thanks to all my friends. Many thanks to Professor Felice Mac, who is Leslie's psychiatrist. This has been so tough, I can't stand it anymore. Many thanks to Tong. Many thanks to my family, and many thanks to my sister Phi. In my life, I have done nothing bad. Why does it have to be like this? Yeah, it's just truly tragic. He died at 46 years old. He lost his battle with depression, and this was a huge wake-up call to society that mental health issues, especially for those who are also idols, should be addressed better and acknowledged. The impact of the public judging his sexual preferences deeply affected Leslie and his ability to just be who he wanted to be, to just be him. But as time went on, the star was not forgotten. In a 2012 interview, Leslie's elder sister Ophelia stated that she said to reporters would frequently stand outside of her brother's home, which hampered his ability to get to his doctor's facility. Thus, he would actually go over to her house to consult with his doctor. He would ask his sister, "Why am I so depressed? I have money and I have so many people who love me." He was reluctant to take medication, though, for his depression at first. Then, in 2013, his former music agent Florence Chan organized 2 memorial concerts entitled Miss You Much, Leslie, on the 31st of March and 1st of April for the 10-year anniversary of his death. Big names of Hong Kong entertainment industry performed at the concert at the Hong Kong Coliseum. In addition, in 2013, his fans from around the world made 2 million Orizori cranes for the Guinness World Record as a tribute to the anniversary. And on the 12th of September 2016, on what would have been his 60th birthday, over 1,000 fans joined Florence Chan in the morning at Po Fook Hill Ancestry Hall for prayers. At night, Leslie's fan club's Red Mission organized Leslie Cheung's 60th Red Hot birthday party to celebrate Leslie. It was an outdoor birthday party at the Central Harbourfront event space with a huge LED screen projecting his past video clips, concerts, songs, and pictures. Eason Chan, a member of Red Mission, joined the party singing his song 4 Season as a tribute to Cheung. In 2019, Leslie, who would have then been 62, is still missed by his fans, his famous friends, and especially his boyfriend Daffy. Daffy had then Instagrammed an old, never-been-seen-before photo of the couple in Europe, alongside the caption, "All the happy memories in the past. Why not we go chase it together?" And the line is taken from Leslie's 1983 Cantonese hit, "And the Wind Keeps on Blowing." And then on the 1st of April 2022 at 8 p.m, Leslie Cheung's Passion Tour concert, remastered in 4K, was released online to mark the 19th anniversary of the canto pop star's death. The remastered concert was live-streamed on Tencent Video and WeChat platforms with enhanced visual image thanks to the AI technology performed by the Tencent Media Lab. So that's kind of it, guys, at the moment for the story of Leslie Cheung and his really tragic death that shook Hong Kong during that time in 2003, which was already a tragic time going through SARS. But for then their most famous canto pop singer to die. And yeah, I just think it's really important to address, the reasons why he might have felt so much depression and loneliness and fear in his life. He was so brave. And honestly, such a hero for being able to be so open about his sexuality and what he stood up for and what he really believed in during that time. Gutting that it ended the way it did, but that is the story of Leslie Cheung. Next week, guys, I think it's time to get gory again. I think it's time to get back into some really, really scary true crime cases. So stick around. Thank you all. Have a wonderful week, and I'll see you next time. Bye-bye.